Hi, I'm Pat Gwyer, clinical psychologist, and today I'd like to talk about growth. When we talk about growth, I want us to think about not only when we are happy, when we might be flourishing, or when we are struggling. We might be somewhere in between struggling and flourishing, and that might be coasting or languishing. No matter where you are, regardless of if you're down here and struggling, you can always do something to develop and improve, and hopefully move further up onto my +10, -10 scale. If you're coasting and languishing, again, you can do something to develop and improve, and again, move up to flourishing and thriving. But even when you're up here, you still need to have growth, you still need to have goals so that you can maintain that sense of flourishing and thriving. So no matter where you are in life, if you are struggling and suffering, or if you're coasting or languishing, or you're flourishing or thriving, growth is a really important part of your well-being, your happiness, and your success. In some of the previous videos, we've talked about the 4 areas, so I'd also like you to remember that we might be struggling in one area of our life. So for example, the biological. We might be feeling biologically unwell or not very great. Socially, we might be coasting or languishing, feeling that things are okay, but they could be better. Spiritually, we might be flourishing and feel that we really have a sense of meaning and purpose. And psychologically, maybe we could be somewhere again around the middle. So what we need to think about is when we think about our personal growth is not just growth in a business context or in a promotional context or in a single context, but to remember that our biological, psychological, social and spiritual areas of our life might be somewhere on this continuum of -10 and +10, and these areas naturally fluctuate in life. When we think about growth, it is really helpful to have goals. Goals help direct our attention, direct our focus, and kind of help us keep on track. Many of you may have heard of smarter life growth, smarter goals. So to ensure that your goals are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-framed, that you evaluate your progress and you reflect. Remember, when we talk about improving well-being, happiness and success, we always want to be improving our sense of awareness, our ability to reflect, so that we can develop insight, so that we can do wise actions. And wise actions are simply those actions that lead to the greatest, most beneficial outcome for us. So we can achieve this by ensuring that we evaluate our process and the progress we're making and reflecting upon what we're learning about ourselves. The other way to make sure that your goals are really effective is to ensure that you build some life into them. So sometimes when we have our goals, it can be really helpful to include things that we love and are passionate about, things that we find interesting and enjoyable. Remembering to be fair and kind to yourself and others. So achieving a goal at any cost is not really success. Achieving a goal at the cost of my friendships, at the cost of my physical health is not success. I need to achieve a goal while being fair and kind to myself and other people. And finally, having goals that ensure that I have a sense of engagement and connection with other people and myself. So really one of the best ways to ensure our personal growth is to make sure that we are aware of the biological, psychological, social and spiritual areas, that we're aware that sometimes these areas we may be struggling, we may be coasting or languishing, or we may be flourishing, but no matter where we are on this curve, we still can do something. We can improve and develop or maintain. And again, you may be doing different things for those different areas. So here, it's also to remember the importance of our resource capital. So focusing on the different areas that make up who we are. Having smarter goals is incredibly helpful, and possibly one of the most important things is to remember to always evaluate and reflect, not just on the outcome. Sometimes the outcome isn't as important as the process. Sometimes the journey is more important than the arrival. And to finally make sure that we build in things that give our goals life. So the things that we love, the things that we enjoy, the things that make us connected and engaged with other people, the things that keep us interested, and of course being fair and kind to ourselves. So that's the first part of how we can really improve our personal growth. On the next one, what I've done is I've broken growth up into a number of other areas. So I've talked about the importance of having smarter life growth. And the G really here is about remembering that our goals should always be growth orientated action learning. So what that means is when we have a goal that helps us achieve something, that helps us move forward, that's much better, that's much more productive for our sense of well-being, happiness and success than a goal that stops us. So for example, the goal to eat healthily involves doing something. It involves planning, it involves having an awareness about what healthy food is, it involves buying healthy food, preparing it. To stop eating unhealthily is a goal, but it's a goal where you're not doing anything. So really, for our goals to be effective, they always need to have an action. We need to be doing something. And of course, momentum builds momentum. So if we make sure they're always growth orientated, we can start to build those very virtuous cycles of growth. And of course, the most important thing out of all of this is for whatever we do is for us to learn more about ourselves, more about our well-being, more about our happiness, more about our success. The more insight we have, the better we can manage and understand, the better we can predict the things that might be impacting our well-being and our happiness. When we can predict things, we can take action to stop them impacting us as detrimentally as maybe they might be. The next thing is to think about the reality. Where am I now? Now, hopefully, we have this ideal self. We have this best possible self. And in the previous videos, I've talked about having your realistic, achievable, ideal self. So to make sure that really when we try and do something, it's grounded in reality. We know what our strengths are, we know what our talents are, but also we know what our limitations are. The reality is here, this is my ideal self, this is the person I want to be. Now remember, you can have that biologically. So you might want to be as physically healthy as you can be, psychologically. So your ability to manage thoughts, emotions, to use your creativity. Socially, so to be socially connected, to have a vocation or an employment that you find rewarding, beneficial, that you're connected to friends and family, maybe spending less time on social media, more time in real, genuine relationships. And of course, spiritually. So when I think about my best possible self, the person who I'd most like to be, I can, again, think of those 4 separate areas of my resource capital to make sure that biologically, psychologically, spiritually, and socially, I'm the best possible version of me I can be. When we know the reality, this is our goal, this is our end point, and maybe in life we never get there, and maybe the getting there, again, the journey is often more important than the arrival at the destination. But if I know that I'm here, what I can start to do is I can start to work out the steps and changes that I need to make to move me from where I am now to where I want to be in the future, to being the person I want to be. We can only do that when we have goals that we set, that we reflect upon, that we evaluate, that we're insightful to. In life, we often have obstacles, and I kind of think about these obstacles a bit like a brick wall. So here's my brick wall. Now, we have choices when we hit those brick walls. We can just stop, we can just give up. Life will always throw us challenges. Life will always provide something, a curveball. There'll always be something there. We can't get around that. That's part of life. When we hit these brick walls, we have a choice. We can stop, we can give up, we can turn around and go back home. Or what we can do is say, right, well, there's a brick wall in front of me. How do I go over it? How do I go round it? How do I go under it? And if I can't go over this brick wall, if I can't go round this brick wall, if I can't go under this brick wall, how am I going to tear it down brick by brick? And this obstacle is not going to stop me achieving my goal. In fact, this obstacle is going to make achieving my goal even greater because I would have worked for it and I would have done something to achieve it. We then have options. So we always have choices. One choice we have is to look at this brick wall in front of us and to give up and to turn around and to go back home and say, do you know what? This is too difficult. This is too challenging. I can't do it. That's an option. But that option doesn't offer opportunities. So really what we want to be aware of is what obstacles am I going to face? What obstacles do I have to come over? How can I go around them, over them, or under them? If I'm aware of them, maybe what I could do is I might be on my journey here and I know there's a possible obstacle there. So if I know that that's going to be an obstacle, I can do something sooner and I can sidestep it. And again, we can only do this when we have insight and awareness and we're able to reflect upon the process of growth. We then need to think of a way forward. So this might be setting short-term goals, medium-term goals, long-term goals. So we can have our short-term goals, our medium-term goals, and our long-term goals. We may even have our end goal here and realize that actually to achieve our end goal, what we have is a number of other goals. I often do this. I think of my end goal will always have 4 parts of it. It will have the biological, the social, the psychological, and the spiritual. And underneath those, there will always be smaller goals that I need to think about. So when I've done this, I identify my way forward. I've identified my reality. I've broken it up into small, manageable steps. So each one of these steps becomes a brick in that wall that I can remove and take away brick by brick so that this obstacle is something that doesn't get in my way. So we can have short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. We can put our goals into a hierarchy. One of the things that is really important with our goals and our way forward is if we have challenge along here, so this is the degree of challenge, this is 10 and this is 0, so this here is not very challenging, this is very challenging, and we have our skills, our ability up here, again 10 at the top, really, really skillful, 0, very limited skills. Remember, skills are something that we can always develop, we can always improve upon our skills. Really what we want to be is in this zone here where the skills we have, the talents and abilities we have, and the challenges that we face are kind of in that balanced position. Because if it's too difficult and we're down here, let's just do a different color. So down here, it's too difficult. So what do we do when things are too difficult? We give up, it's too hard. Up here, it's too easy. What do we do when things are too easy? We lose motivation, we lose interest. So when we set our goals, we want to be aware of this balance between the skills and abilities we have and the challenges we face, and make sure that we're in that zone, that we are challenging ourselves, that we are stretching ourselves, but we are not overwhelming ourselves. We're not losing interest, we're not losing motivation. It isn't too easy, it isn't too difficult, it's just right. And remember that this here, if we go back to struggling, coasting, languishing, flourishing, this here goes up and down at different times, again, socially, psychologically, biologically, and spiritually. So when we remember about our skills and ability and the challenge, this here moves around. Sometimes something might be easy, sometimes it might be difficult, but we keep trying, we keep evaluating, and we keep reflecting. We keep coming back to setting goals. We keep making sure that our goals are growth orientated, so they're always going to be moving us forward. They always involve action. They always involve doing. Action, doing, momentum builds momentum. And when we do that, we can start getting those positive things. And of course, learning. We want to be continuously learning. The more we learn, the more skills we have, the more challenges we can face, and we can make sure that we always stay in that range. So that's my tactics. Way forward. The tactics is how I'm going to do it. So again, this idea of maybe have a hierarchy, short term. It's how do I do that? How do I break things down? What skills do I need? When we evaluate and reflect, we know what skills we have, what skills we don't have, what skills we need to develop. Do I need to focus on making sure my biological well-being, my sleep, my diet, my routine, my exercise, treating physical illness, using medication as prescribed, avoiding alcohol, avoiding drugs, to make sure that I'm as physically healthy as possible. Because if I'm physically healthy, my psychological well-being will be much better. Emotions will be easier to manage, thoughts will be easier to manage, body sensations. I'll be able to tap into my creativity. I'll be able to be more compassionate. I'll be able to be kinder. All of those psychological things that make me up will be much easier for me to tap into and use if I'm biologically well. Socially, if I'm connected, so socially it can be education, employment, housing, my friends, my families, my relationships. And relationships are difficult. Sometimes we have to work on them. Relationships, like everything, have these ups and downs. Spiritually, am I getting a sense of meaning and purpose? What can I do to feel more meaning? What can I do to feel more purpose? What can I do for other people to look at the bigger picture, to step outside of myself? So again, this is the how, maybe also the where, and of course what we want is the what am I going to do? And we always want to be growth orientated, doing and learning, so that we can continually grow. Finally, we want it to become habit. We want to do this so often that it becomes a bit like driving a car or riding a bike. If you can remember when you first learned to drive a car or ride a bike, it's really quite complicated. You have to remember mirror, signal, gears, steering, other road users. Riding a bike, you have to remember your balance, which brake does what, steering, changing gears. It's really hard. But when you've been doing it for a while, it becomes automatic. It becomes habit. It becomes the natural thing for you to do. You can only do that when you keep practicing and practicing and practicing. So when you practice, this becomes a habit. You habitually, automatically focus on growth-orientated action and continuous learning. Now, the important thing is, when things become habits, a bit like driving a car, it can be really easy for us to be in a mindless autopilot. If you think about when you drive a car, your drive to work or your drive home from work, sometimes we can't even remember the journey or the route we took because we've been in this mindless autopilot because it's just become habit. That's why we just go back to our smarter growth goals. We always have evaluation, reflection, awareness, reflection, insight. And again, that brings us into the importance of mindfulness, the importance of being aware and not being in a mindless autopilot. So today's talk's been about the importance of growth, whether or not it's growth in a personal or professional context. To remember that we have these 4 areas: our biological, psychological, social and spiritual. We can be struggling and suffering, we can be coasting or languishing, we can be flourishing. We can work out the steps to improve how we're feeling by setting goals which direct our attention and direct our focus. It is really helpful to have smarter life goals, and the evaluation and reflection is really important. Remember, the process, the journey is just as important, if not more important, than reaching the final destination. We want to make sure that our goals to get the most growth always include things that we love and are passionate about, things that we find interesting, enjoyable, that are fair to ourselves and others. Remember, success at any cost is not success. And engaging and provide a sense of connection. All of our smarter life growth goals, we want to be growth orientated. No matter where we are, we can continually be moving forward. We want them to be doing, we want them to be action, because momentum builds momentum. And we want to keep on learning. We want to know the reality. Where are we now? Where am I now? Where do I want to be? What is my best possible self? My ideal, best possible, realistic self? And again, that's biologically, psychologically, socially and spiritually. And then when I've worked that out, I can think about my way forward and my tactics. So how am I going to get there? Being aware of what obstacles, what brick walls are going to be put up in front of me. When those brick walls come up and I go over them, around them or under them, if I become more aware of the likely obstacles in the future, I can do something to sidestep them sooner. I can set short, medium and long-term goals. I can place them in a hierarchy. And again, if you do place them in a hierarchy, I find that having the biological, social, psychological and spiritual, and then the smaller goals underneath there, is a really helpful way to break your growth down, to break the journey down into a step by step. And then finally, I want to do this so often that I become a master of it. It becomes an automatic thing for me to do, and it just becomes the way that I approach life. I always approach life in a growth-orientated, action, learning way. But I am mindful that this habit doesn't lead me to become mindless and in a mindless autopilot, and I always remember to evaluate and to reflect so that I have awareness, reflection and insight, which will always lead to wise action. Today's talk's been about growth. I hope you found it useful. There's a PDF attached to this talk, so please do download that. If you have any questions or would like to find out some more, please do message me. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a fantastic day.